Welcome to episode 2 of Crippled with Anxiety. Hey, we're podcasters now. My name's Will.
I'm Danny.
And welcome. Who'd have thought we'd be here for a second episode? After our first one went out into the worldwide web, we got some feedback, and it was good. Now, mainly feedback with some friends and family, but any feedback is good feedback. So
You've got to pitch to who you know, Will. You've got to pitch to who you know.
That's true, yeah, and they do know us. Yeah, there's no doubt in that. So we thought they liked it. Let's give it a second shot. You know, this could be the difficult second album. Who knows how this is going to go? But let's see what happens. So thought we'd talk today a bit about what's new with us. It was 6 months, I want to say, actually, since we recorded that first podcast. It took us a long time to pluck up the courage to get it out. And for Danny to try and edit it.
Will says, "Look up the courage." What he means is Danny's not been diagnosed with ADHD yet. He's awaiting diagnosis. But if you need proof, 6 months to edit and put out a podcast is probably proof enough. So Will's been cracking the whip, and we got it out there. And yeah, as you say, it's seems to have done well. We seem to have started a bit of a conversation. So here we are, back to continue that work.
Yeah, absolutely. So what is new with us? So I don't quite know how this works. This is going to be a question sort of, I need your input from Dan as well. But for people with physical disabilities, I find that you're not just limited, for want of a better word, to one. You tend to get other things going wrong with you. And you know, I'm, for example, more susceptible to colds and infections and stuff like that. But also, I tend to just pick up other autoimmune conditions. I'm, hoping to get a full house soon, and maybe entitles me to like a free Big Mac or something. But I don't know if it's sort of similar with people with mental health conditions. If you kind of find out the one can lead into another one and can lead into another one.
Yeah, I mean, I feel with that. You see, there's a lot of studies being now as we delve more into sort of mental health as a society based issue rather than just a sort of siloed thing with individuals. And you find that a lot of studies that are being done, OCD can link directly with ADHD. So it's not a surprise that I'm going through that process now. I've been diagnosed with one. Anxiety, again, can lead into depression. They can sort of peak and trough at different times, but I suppose it's like any chronic illness, really. They can keep coming back. You can feel better at times. Recovery doesn't necessarily mean cured. It just means sort of balanced and feeling on an even keel. But I suppose in a way that kind of, it can impact sort of physical conditions as well. Like, as you say, like you're more susceptible to colds from an immune system perspective, but mentally as well. If you're going through anxiety or depression or any of these disorders that I have, you find there's times where you won't look after yourself as much as you should, or you won't eat as much as you should, or you're not drinking enough water, so you'll get headaches or be prone to picking up infections. So yeah, it's interesting how it all links together. But yeah, I'd say there's definitely a direct correlation. But you've been through some more life changes recently. I say recently, it's been 6 months, but still the amount of stuff that we've been through in 6 months, I think will probably shock some listeners in the next 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, we really hope this doesn't become a regular feature of what's new with us, because yeah, it's not fun having to go through new things, find out new diagnoses and what have you. So yeah, I'll kick it off. So 6 months ago now, going back to September, picture the scene, routine dental visit, all going well. These days, the dentist, if you've not been to one for a while, they check your tongue as well to make sure that there's nothing nasty there. And dentist checked mine, and she said, "Oh, have you bitten your tongue recently?" I was like, "No, don't think so. I think I'd remember." She goes, "Yeah, you'd probably remember this one. There's a sizable chunk, sort of, or marker underneath your tongue." I was like, "Okay, well, no, don't think I have, but who knows, might have done." She goes, "Well, go home, rinse it out with some salt water for a few times a day for a week and come back and we'll have another look." So I went home, did all that, came back, no better. I was like, nuts. this means one thing, and that's a biopsy. Now, I've had some biopsies in the past, and they're not fun. And a tongue biopsy is really not fun. That is at the top of the list of things that are not fun to have.
Especially not when you're trying to start a budding career as a podcaster, because you kind of need that organ
tongue is
to
really important.
discuss this stuff.
It is. It's really important. So went off, had my appointment, stick a needle in your tongue, which is equally as fun as it sounds. And after very nearly passing out and turning white from the effects of local anaesthetic, I took a nice old scalpel and hacked away at the underside of my tongue. Hacked might be slightly sensationalist. Obviously, they're professionals. They're carefully curated, and then sewed it back up again, and off I went. And yeah, having your tongue cut open is really uncomfortable. Once the anaesthetic wears off, because you leave the hospital, you're thinking, yeah, this is fine, no problems here. And then about 2 hours later, the anaesthetic's worn off, and you think, wow. So for 3 or 4 days, I was on soup. I just couldn't eat. It hurt. Everything hurt. You sneeze, you swallow, you yawn, you cough. I mean, everything. You use your tongue for everything. And of course, it's not sort of the point of this story, but with not eating properly, with my diabetes, I was hypoing a lot overnights as well. But yeah, so that has its own issues. Anyway, results came back. Sure enough, yeah, inconclusive. There might be something, there might not be. So this time I'm going to go away for a few more weeks, take some medication, and come back, and we'll do another biopsy. Woo!
I mean, for someone with anxiety, it doesn't really. I've not really got health anxiety, but to go for something as serious as that and go through the physical thing, and then to hear we actually still don't know is, which is probably the most upsetting bit about that, is because it's like I've been through all this and I still don't know if it's really serious or it's okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of weird. I'm kind of not quite at that point. Because for me, I wasn't bothered about the result, really. It was like, whatever it is, I'll deal with it. I was more bothered by having to go through this again. The first time, ignorance was bliss. It was like, oh, I don't know what to expect. I don't know how long it's going to last. But now I do. Now I know it's not going to be fun. Now I know I'm going to be in pain for a few days afterwards, and doped up on my head on codeine. So luckily, they wanted to do it just before Christmas. I was like, no, you are not destroying my ability to eat and drink over the festive period. That is a hard no.
That's what we save ourselves for.
Exactly. This has been building up to this all year. And the nurse, she fully understood. And the doctor was like, can we not? And she was like, no. The nurse was fully on my side. We are not doing this to him before Christmas. It's like, New Year comes, have another biopsy. To be fair, this one was slightly better. They didn't quite cut as much out this time. So go away, pain, discomfort, hypoing, and all that. Come back a few weeks later, and they go, yeah, okay, we can see that there's some medical jargon, high-grade dysplasia, which apparently just means there's some funky-looking cells in there that shouldn't really be doing what they're doing. So he said, we can either leave it and we'll just do some checks every few months, or we can cut it out fully and then we won't have to worry about it anymore. But if we do the checks, we may still have to cut it out. So I was like, well, okay, let's just get it over with then.
Does that give you chances of it spreading further in that time as well? If it was something worse?
Exactly. Yes, exactly that. So they said, if this is cancer, then we've got it really early, and we don't want it to spread, obviously, because once it starts spreading, that's when you're in serious trouble. So I was like, well, it's a no-brainer then, really, isn't it? Let's get it ridiculously early, or even, I say ridiculously, it might not even be cancer. They just didn't know at that point. So it's like, yeah, easy option. Let's do that. So luckily, this is a general anaesthetic. So for those who might not know the difference, local anaesthetic is when they just stick a needle in and numb the specific area, and generally when they just put you to sleep. So went in there, had it done, and it must be said, for about 2 or 3 days afterwards, it was really okay. Like it didn't really hurt that much. And all the doctors and the nurses beforehand made a real big thing of how horrible this was going to be afterwards. And this was really not a fun recovery. So much so that I got some really strong painkillers to take home with me. But for like 3 days after, and I think he even messaged you at one point, didn't I, John? He said, I don't know what all the fuss was about. I feel fine.
Yeah, I remember on the day I messaged you just to check in. And I said something like, you can reply, like, obviously when you're feeling better, and you were like, oh, and you replied straight away. I said, well, how did it, have you not been in yet? And you were like, oh no, I'm out. I'm just sat up in bed. And I was like, I don't understand how you've done that. And it was a few days later that when I saw you again, you were like, yeah, hit me a few days later when I needed to hit those heavy pills that I've been given.
Yeah. And when it hit. So it really wasn't fun. I mean, it wasn't just that I couldn't eat. It was, I just didn't feel like eating. I didn't want to talk. I mean, literally everything hurt if it involved moving my mouth. You know, I was happy to just sit in silence for an entire day, not eating, not drinking. I just didn't want anything. And again, when you're type 1 diabetic, it's not necessarily good to not be eating all the time either. So, yeah, that was pretty terrible. And again, another side effect, for those of you who have ever taken very strong opiate painkillers, there is a very well-known side effect of opiates, and that is it blocks you up. Yeah. And I hadn't really thought about it because I was more concerned about what was going on in my mouth rather than anywhere else in my body. So I'm popping these painkillers on a pretty regular basis, thinking, I'm just about coping with this now, just about tolerating it. And then it dawned on me, I'd not been to the bathroom for a few days. And it was like, I've kind of rationalized it. Like, well, I've not really been eating much. I've just been having soups and liquids and, you know, it's fine. Everything's okay. I thought it's fine. I don't need to do anything. A couple more days went by and it was like, yeah, this probably isn't good. So I eventually got the urge, went to the bathroom, and just pain and discomfort like I haven't experienced in a very long time. And it was awful. And I'm sat there thinking, I can't go anywhere. I'm kind of stuck on the toilet. So, yeah, the entire day was in absolute agony, coupled with trying to stay on the toilet. And of course, when you're in a wheelchair, I can't just stand up and walk around. I have to sit. So I am sat for the day, trying to go back over to bed and try and lie on my bed, which was a bit of relief. And it got to the stage where my wife said, why didn't you call 111? Let's just see if I can get you something to help get things moving. I thought, yeah, okay, I've got nothing to lose by this point. So I called them thinking they're going to kind of say, yeah, just eat some fiber or something, you know. But when I said that I couldn't pee either, they were like, oh, yeah, this might be a bit serious. But yeah, can you get yourself to A&E? Like, oh, yes, I can. So by about 7 o'clock in the evening, I was down at A&E. And to be fair, it was pretty quiet. I think I was in and out within a few hours, really. And
well, you were in. There was nothing coming out.
Yes, there was nothing coming out, nothing coming out whatsoever. And you know, but not necessarily lunchtime as we're recording this, lunchtime listening, but I had to have an enema. You know, they had
I think you say that. And we'll have to tick the explicit button on this episode because I'm about to drop our first rude word. But I think with this podcast, it's clear that there's going to be no shit with us. And in this case, it was definitely the case with you. So I think our listeners will appreciate that we're not trying to sugarcoat anything here. And it's a serious side effect of something else serious that you're going through. So
yeah,
it's
exactly.
a pretty big deal.
It was, yeah. I mean, at the time, it was huge. I mean, it was was all encompassing. By this point, it had overtaken any pain going on in my mouth. I was just, I said all encompassing. And so I had an enema, and then I had to. They luckily positioned me right by the doors into the corridor where the toilet was. I mean, bless him, poor nurse did say, we can bring you a commode if you want next to your bed. I'm thinking these poor people in A&E, they've got enough stuff going on without me sat in this curtained off area. Remember, it's only curtains. This doesn't protect smells or noises or anything. I was like, there's no way I could actually do anything in this bay full of people who are, some of them, you could see were pretty bad. So I was like, no, I'm fine. I'll get myself off to the loo. So, procedure done. Off I went to the loo. And it did its thing, shall we say. I was no longer full of shit, as we've already used that phrase. I'm going to say it again. But then, this flood of relief. I mean, God, it was euphoria. But the whole time this is going on, this is a public toilet. This is like one of the few toilets available for people in A&E. And there's people knocking on the door, going, "Hello, is someone there?" I'm busy at the moment. It's like, this isn't I'm not coming out anytime soon. So I felt really sorry for them. At one point, some bloke, even because I've been in there so long, went and got the nurse to make sure that I was okay. Wife said I should have just been honest and said, "I'm sorry, I've just had an enema. I'm here for a while," but I didn't. I did the British thing of going, "No, I'm fine, thank you. Please, just go away."
I'm polite. I'm not talking about it. And if they were true Brits, they'd be queuing outside for as long as it took, because they love the queue.
Yeah. So all that happened, relief. So finally, go back on my chair, go back to the ward, go home. Except, and this is a problem I've come across before with NHS toilets, right? So as a wheelchair user, I use a transfer board to be able to get out of my chair and slide horizontally onto car seats, beds, sofas, toilets, etc. Now that works if where you're transferring to or from is relatively flat. Downhill is fine, I should add. I've got gravity. I can go down almost any angle. That's not a problem. That's controlled falling. But going up,
that's like a wheelchair user Buzz Lightyear.
Yes, there you go. Controlled falling with style. I'm going to use that one. Yeah. Hashtag controlled falling with style. So I got the chair was next to me, and I realized I was much lower than my chair. And I thought, well, I'll try. Obviously, I always give it a go, and I gave it a go, and I was not moving. I had no strength in my legs to push myself back up into my chair. And I thought, well, I've locked the door, obviously, and I'm stuck in this toilet, and there's people outside. So pulled that emergency cord. Public note, if you are in a toilet and you see one of those red cords, make sure it is dangling on the floor. So many places tie them up. Yeah. If I fall on the floor, I can't reach that emergency cord. So, do everyone a favor, untangle it if they've wrapped it around anything and let it drape on the floor as it should. Anyway, pressed the button because I had a button and a cord in. I was closer to the button. So I pressed the button and sat down. The alarm was blaring outside in this hallway. And I could hear this bloke still outside. And I'm going, you all right, mate? I just need some help, please. A couple of nurses came, knocked on the door. You all right? Well, no, can't get back in my chair. I said, and they tried the handle, but it's locked. So I was like, well, it was like, well, give us a minute. I'm thinking, well, what are they going to do? I'm expecting like the Shining thing, with the axe coming through the door or something to break it down. But I think all they did, it just wasn't locked very well, because they just put their shoulder on the door a couple of times and pop, door open. They came in, one on either side of me, lifted me up, dumped me back in my chair, and all was done. So eventually I got home. That was all okay. Got some medication to make sure that doesn't happen again. But yeah, my tongue still, the point of the original story, my tongue, still a bit.
Forgot we were talking about the tongue for a while. Yeah. We've been on bowel movements for a while.
Drifted a bit there, didn't we? All round. This is three weeks. The other day it's been, and it's still very sore. And I've got to go. Finally got my appointment letter for still about 4 weeks away before I'm going to get to find out. Is it cancer or is it not? Who knows? It's like an ending of EastEnders. Feel like we need a little.
Yeah, the drums can hit.
Yeah, that's it. So yeah, join us in a future episode when we get to find out what's going on. And
yeah, we probably won't have that as like a Patreon special or a live stream. We'll let you find out that news yourself first, because that's because I love your outlook on that though. Like, for someone that has catastrophized a lot of my life about things that probably won't happen, to be given this could happen or it couldn't happen, and just be able to like get through it smiling and talking about sliding off toilets is it's testament to your strength and everything you've managed to go through to get to this point where you can talk about it. So yeah, from my point of view, that's it. Yeah, it's nice to see you be able to just say we'll deal with it as it comes. It's that's what I think recovery looks for, or looks like in sort of OCD when you do the exposure response stuff that we discussed in the first episode. It's just to be comfortable with any of your worst thoughts or feelings could happen, because there's no such thing as certainty. What you've got to become accustomed to and comfortable with is, if they do, you'll deal with it as and when it happens. So if a family member gets ill, then you'll have to deal with it as it comes. There's no amount of light switches you can flick on and off to save them from going through that, unless, of course, to save them, you just got to get them out of the dark. It's probably a quick win, but otherwise, compulsions aren't going to help that. So, yeah, what you're showing right now is sort of what recovery looks like from an OCD perspective, and just being comfortable with when it happens, we'll get through it with the people that are around us.
That's interesting. Yeah, I've not really thought about it as that. I mean, I don't think I would be as blasé about it had I not had all the other issues. I think if this was like the first big hurdle I'd come across in my life, more health issue, hurdle, I should say, I think I'd be freaking out a lot. But yeah, you just get to a point when it's, I mean, maybe it's not healthy. I don't know. Maybe there should be some degree of anxiety or fear or something about it. But it's just, yeah, I'm so.
I don't think that necessarily isn't present in you. It's just you don't want that to dominate. Because there's also that thing of like, if you are ill, and as twee as this is going to sound, but like feeling positively about it is going to impact you in a more beneficial way than if you were feeling negative and letting yourself go and being upset about it, because your body just starts to go, well, if the brain's giving up, then what hope have I got? So I think that positive side, it's not that you're not scared and you'll be upset if that diagnosis came through. I guess anyone would, but I suppose for you, it's just, you've got a wife at home, 2 lovely kids, like their lives are going on with you in it. You don't want to just sit there thinking, one day I might not be here, because right now you are here and you're going through that life with them. So it's just nice to be present in that moment. I think it's, from my perspective, it is what I do see a lot in myself now, but in the past, that's the stage you're at with acceptance of anything that's thrown your way, is sort of where I would want to be in recovery. And a lot of people are probably looking to be, from the anxiety, depression, mental health side of listeners, are probably looking at you going, hopefully one day that's where I can get to, where I'm like, I'm okay with whatever comes my way and I can either fight it or celebrate that it's good news.
Oh, I like that. I like that it's, yeah, you put it like that it's, you've got that sort of goal, and you can see that is there progress being made. I guess that's good. I've not really not thought about it like that at all.
Yeah, but I mean, I suppose that's what's, and some of the comments we had were that it's good that we've got yourself and me like on two opposite sides of where physical and mental health sort of intertwine a little bit. And when you're going through physical conditions, you don't really think of the mental stuff because you're going through it. When I'm going through the mental stuff, I don't necessarily see until it's too late that my physical health is taking a hit. And I suppose we'll touch on that when we get to my little update as well. But yeah, it's, I guess what we highlight all the time between us separately is how much stuff we go through that is the same, but just in the form of a different reaction to whatever stimulus is put in front of us. Like in the first episode, we discussed sort of being in Costa. For you, it was physically, I can't get around that corner. And for me, it was, I'm not mentally prepped to talk to the people or ask them to move. But like, it's the same scenario, but completely different reactions to it. So it's interesting how we both have to react to things.
No, it is. Yeah, it definitely. I mean, I say we've all got kind of the same problems in life. It's just, you know, our approach to them differs vastly, and it's what makes us different, isn't it? What makes it what makes it a society. So you touched on it there, that you've also gone through some more health issues since our first episode. So do you want to tell us about it?
Yeah. I mean, pre-warning, some of it does include bowel movements, so we've got a bit of a topic here. You couldn't go. I was potentially going too much. So yeah,
A Schrodinger's poop scenario.
a Schrodinger's poop situation. Definitely.
There is poop or there isn't poop. Nobody.
Yeah, if you lock us both in that toilet together, no one on the outside knocking on the door will know if we've been or we've not been. It's a Schrodinger's poop. So I mean, we're going to touch on sort of our journeys in a much longer episode. But the past couple of years have been pretty rough for me in general. So as I sort of came through the OCD, anxiety, depression spike that I'd been through and going through that diagnosis, I have been faced with a lot of grief as I lost sort of two grandparents, and then one was 2 days after Christmas in 2022, and then my mum got ill in the January and passed away in the May, which is obviously, it's a huge change in your life and it's a huge loss. And then I took the summer off because I was going through grieving and sort of that depression symptoms, and anxiety was at a high as well because my biggest confidant was now gone and there was nothing I could do to bring her back, or even you beat yourself up a little bit because you couldn't save her at the time either. And you're also trying to be there for everyone else, and that's difficult. But then I went back to work in November after a few months away. And then the second day of my new job, my remaining grandfather on this side of the family got ill on my mum's side, and he passed away about 2 weeks later because he went in with a routine. Well, we say routine. He went in with a bit of confusion, which for older people could be a UTI. It could be little things that affect people. And as they went in, they said, we don't think it's a stroke, but we'll take it to Bolton. It feels like there's an infection or a blockage. He'll probably be an outpatient. He'll be out in a couple of days. We'll bring him back in. Fast forward a couple of days, he had cancer of the stomach and liver, and within 2 weeks, he'd passed away. So that backstory, we'll go into that in more detail in the future, but that backstory leads into, I started to feel unwell sort of around that time as well. And I put it down to sort of grief and depression, and those symptoms mimic physical illnesses as well, because grief and anxiety and the mental health side of things can affect your stomach. They call it your second brain, the stomach, and that's how you know certain things can be up with you. So I was going more regularly, and it just felt like my stomach it just didn't feel great. And when I was going to the toilet, it wasn't the same as it had been. You notice a change, whether you go in or you're not. And I was starting to feel really fatigued and run down. And I was getting sort of migraines again, which I've had before, which again can all be linked to sort of stress and that side. And I went to the doctor in probably January time, just to sort of discuss this. But I mean, since that, the past, I think it's been 2 months now, every day I've had headache for the past 2 months, and they don't know what that is. So what I'd put off as symptoms of fatigue and just general unwellness, I've been in for all these tests. So the test that I had, recent results back. Initially, you go into any doctors and they test you for serious conditions. Are all your organs working as they should? Is there any cancer anywhere that there shouldn't be? That was fun when I'm going to the toilet, not as consistent as I used to be, and then I'm having to dig through said toilet to fill up like 4 test tubes to send off to see if, again, using the big C, see if there's cancer there at 31 years old. It's quite an intensive process. So that has given me, and I think I mentioned it in the first episode, I was an IBS diagnosis away from completing an alphabet of disorders. I've now been diagnosed with IBS, which you think would be helpful, and there'd be, okay, well, this is what it means. But what I was told was, maybe it's stress, maybe it's all the other things that are going on. Maybe I get too much fiber in my diet, but maybe I don't get enough fiber in my diet. So effectively, I'm as I was, but now I can say, but I've got IBS. So that's a fun little.
That must be tough. I mean, as someone who, I mean, I say it's one thing I've not had, but what I do know of it is it sounds pretty awful. But as you said, you'd expect once you get that diagnosis that you'd be thinking, okay, good, I know what this is. I can do A, B, and C now to alleviate the symptoms, make life more comfortable. But if they then turn around and go, yeah, we don't know if A is going to work or B is going to work. I mean, I think it's just as a person who doesn't sort of suffer from anxiety or anything like that, I would be a bit, well, hang on a minute, that's not right. I'd be a bit stressed and worried about what can I do. So that must sort of send that side of your health into overdrive.
Yeah, and it's difficult as well because you start to realize that, well, maybe I need to look at my diet and see what I've been taking in, and is that affecting sort of how my stomach's working, and sort of that stress side of things. How do I bring my stress levels down? But part of that, I guess, is the social side of things. If you want to avoid anxiety and depression and you're facing grief, you go out with friends, you might have a couple of beers or go out for a meal. If I'm then having that taken away from me because I know that I might pay for it in an hour or so, it's like, well, not only am I now having to eat salads and all bran all day, but I'm not enjoying the things that I am doing. It's not, as much as it's linked as a way of like treatment, the things that they tell you to do for anxiety, go out and do these things and be with friends and go to events and things. It's like, yeah, well, that's not necessarily an option if I've got to turn up and go, sorry guys, I'm just on the water today, because otherwise I might be locked in that toilet for the next 3 hours. It's and I suppose the embarrassment comes with that as well, because like when you're first going through it, like with OCD, I've said in the past, like I didn't want to tell people I was checking the door 10 times. I just said I'd overslept. So now I'm going to say, oh, I was taking a phone call, not I've just deflated like a human balloon in the public toilets around the corner. Like it's not what you want to be telling your friends, is it? But I suppose that's part of the pod is to be open and honest about what we're going through. And yeah, that's been me. I mean, what comes from that as well is that diagnosis is fine, but the headaches, and I've had dizziness, so I've been diagnosed with vertigo as well. And again, they don't know if this is stress related or there's something neurological, or it's, and as awful as it sounds, like I've not got bad health anxiety, but there is a part of me that's thinking, I've been referred to neurology now. Doctors don't know what's causing headaches. It's been every day for 2 months. Is it a tumor? Immediately you think, well, if they don't know what it is, am I going to go and get a brain scan and that's what they're going to tell me? And I suppose I'm trying to be like you and going, well, if that is the case and that's why I'm having headaches, fine. I'd much rather it be the stress side. But there is a big part of me that's like, that's not fun to think about. And until I know that lack of certainty,
I think that's, to me, that's a normal reaction. I mean, I think anyone who's had some headaches, a lot of headaches. I mean, even I'll get a headache, and it's probably because I've had too much to drink the night before, whatever. But I'll still think there's a quick, couple of second burst in my head. Oh, I've got a tumor, because I think just everyone automatically goes to worst case. I think it's just the way that we prep ourselves, I think, for news. I mean, I'm generally pretty pessimistic about things. But I think it's a great way of prepping yourself. If you're thinking, God, I got a brain tumor, and then you go and they go, no, you just need to drink more, and you go, oh, brilliant.
Yeah.
I was prepared for the worst, and I was really convinced it was the worst. And actually, it's not too bad. So I think anyone kind of has that.
Well, I mean, we saw that when I went in as part of the symptoms, there was sort of that upset stomach, and the immediate thing was, we're going to do this test for cancer. So immediately you're like, well, that's going to be my reaction now to anything I go to the doctor for. Because if that's their initial thought, there's a part of me that's like, well, why would they immediately do that? And I know they're trying to rule that out immediately,
Yeah.
so they figure it. But like,
that's what they have to do.
And figure it out.
You start serious, because serious means quick. And serious means, I mean, it's like with my tongue, that time frame from the first doctor's visit to that biopsy was about 2 weeks, which is what they want. I think it's about 2 weeks for an initial cancer appointment if they suspect something. So, yeah, they do go quick and fast if they suspect something is. But I guess that's good. You don't want them going, well, it might be cancer. Come back in a couple of months' time and, we'll see how it all looks. It's like, well, no, because if it's cancer, I want something doing right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I agree. It is a bit scary when that's where they leap to. But equally, for me, it's quite satisfying that that is where they go first, because you're thinking, well, they are taking this seriously, and at least we can rule this out immediately, and then I can just relax a little. So yeah,
when I went in, I was saying, like, I feel like because I had quite a few symptoms that I'd let build up over time, because I put it down to sort of grief and being low, because I've had a rough couple of years, like alongside those sort of family members that I've lost. Like my dad fell and broke his wrist and couldn't use his arm. My girlfriend was in a car crash. Like last year was, if you were writing down what your worst year would be, these were the deleted scenes because there was too much happening. Like it was one of those years. So I just put it down to that, and they said, like, no, you are going through a few things. Because I was going in, as you said, like you didn't want anyone to come and give you a commode or whatever, because you feel like you're wasting people's time, or you're not actually that ill, or they're just going to turn around and tell you, like, oh, well, drink more or stress. But they've taken it quite seriously. Like I've been signed off work while I wait for this neurology appointment, purely because, like, today, staring at the screen is the amount of screen time that I'll be able to really have. 2 days ago, we went for a walk for an hour. I came home from that walk and was in bed for 3. Like I'm that low and fatigued, and like the headache just takes it out of you. So they've put me at ease to say that they're trying to figure it out. At the minute, I've had a diagnosis of it's migraine symptoms, which I've had since I was about 15, but constant, which can be caused by chronic stress and anxiety. So let's bring that down. But it's hard to bring that down when you can't do anything but close your eyes and sleep and have an hour at a time looking at a screen. Then I went back and they said, oh, it probably might be cluster headaches. So don't take the tablets you've been given. It's probably cluster headaches instead. I then went back yesterday for a procedure for the vertigo, where they kind of lay me back and move my head around and made me dizzy and tried to shake loose. It's like some sort of crystals or something that over time loosen in your ear canals and all the tubes that work in your head. And I was told that as we get older, those break away. I had to remind him I was 31. Like, can we not say I'm getting older, please? So I went through that, but then the same doctor was like, oh, so they've said cluster headaches. Do you have a runny nose and runny eyes? And I was like, no. She went, probably not cluster headaches then. So that kind of puts me back at well, what the hell's wrong with me? So now I'm waiting for this neurology appointment where they're going to do scans and things. And I suppose that's where I've gone through all this to this point, going, because like I've said to Will when we've met up or whatever, I've got headache now. It's just not horrendous, but I've just become, because I've had it for 2 months, I just know that it's there and I live with it. There's times where it's sharp stabbing and there's like light aversion and stuff, but otherwise it's just something that's constantly there. But also the thought is, then what is that?
Yeah. So, yeah. You just have to move on and live with it, annoyingly.
So, yeah, that's 6 months is lots happened to us. Stay tuned for future updates. Hopefully there won't be a health update every time.
Really,
I'm hoping that it turns out I was just stressed, and like eating all bran was all I needed to get me out of that funk and fix my stomach and my head. So we shall see.
Excellent. Yes, exactly. More updates to come at some point. So yeah, stay tuned. So during after our first episode went out, we actually had some questions come in. I mean, it's great. It means people actually want to engage with us. Brilliant. Please, anyone listening to this, feel free to get in touch with us. I think all our links tend to be tied into our bios on Spotify and Amazon, wherever you find us. We will probably have a means of communicating. So please do get in touch if there's anything you want us to talk about, or questions you might have for any of us about what we're going through. Nothing is off limits. We will probably cover it at some point, but if you want to ask us sooner, by all means get in touch. But one thing we did have with last week being neurodivergent week was just a question for you, Danny, just about how you view these types of weeks or days. You know, I think it does seem like a lot of conditions these days, both mental and physical, have an awareness week or an awareness day. And yeah, so what's your view on these neurodivergent week?
Yeah, I mean, first touching on Will, as we got our first sort of questions through, we're quite excited, and we've wanted to call it a mailbag, but at the minute I don't think it's big enough for a bag. So please do send any questions or comments in that we can discuss, because as we said, we're hoping this is a conversation with a lot more people than just Will and I. But yeah, this question was interesting because I don't know if it's because I've been going through what I've been going through and I've just not been switched on or being on social or anything a lot. But Will, you actually told me that it was neurodivergent week, not the other way around, which I guess speaks volumes for how impactful that was for me as someone in that community. As a whole, I don't hate having those weeks. I think that it's key for a lot of charities, especially, to be able to link their work to a specific cause and big event, and sort of a big like highlight campaign to get people talking about it and understanding and just raising awareness about what they're working on. The bit that I probably take issue with, and I don't know if it's the same for listeners or for yourself, from any sort of charities or weeks or days that impact yourself, but it's when it becomes a virtue signaling, or people are jumping on it just to be like, oh yeah, that seems to be something that's popular and it's a trend. It's not a trend, it's people's lives and it's people's identities a lot of the time. And I do see that a lot when you see different logos or colors used on coffee cups, or how much of that work goes on throughout the year. How much of that work is just, we're supporting Neurodivergent Week because we want to sell more product this week, and how much is we support it when people aren't talking about it. It's all that.
The big one for that is sorry, Dan, I talked over you there. The big one for that, isn't it, is the LGBTQ plus month, when you see all over social media brands changing their logos to the rainbow flag, unless those brands also have accounts in the Middle East, in which case they don't change them. You know, so it's like, really, are you pushing for change, or are you pushing for our change? Oh, that was clever. I like that. You know, so yeah, it's really
it's right. As a like quite, I think both of us, we're allies of that community, and it'd be great for someone in that community that we know to kind of tell us how they feel about that. But I do feel that how much of it is virtue signaling, how much of it is just jumping on the back of people who are trying to, it's their identity and they're trying to make change in the world, but actually you're not making change in the world, you're making a rainbow product for 1 week a year to sell rainbow product. And then do you talk about it the rest of the year? Are you talking to your manufacturers, customers in other countries that are where it's still illegal? It's the same with mental health as well. Like, how many countries did you used to just be lobotomized, euthanized, like for having a different brain to the rest of people? Like when you didn't understand something, you'd be studied on, you'd be a test subject, and now it's like, oh, it's okay to be different, but is it? And is it throughout the year, or is it just in these weeks? Like I said, I think it's great for a lot of charities to be able to highlight the great work that they do, where the spotlight is on them when otherwise it wouldn't be, because there's charities doing work throughout the year that wouldn't have people seeing them, because unfortunately we live in a world where charities are needed for people just to exist. It's not all government funding, it's not all sort of that social funding. It is charities that need set up to help all these different causes and days. But you've also got, if you go and try and find any days, like tomorrow might be, sorry if I'm insulting the National Cheeseburger fans, but like tomorrow might be National Cheeseburger Day. And at what point does that dilute the messages of impactful days when it's, well, I'm going to have a sandwich on that day because it's BLT day or whatever? It's like, yeah, at what point do we draw the line?
And the BLT. Don't insult the BLT.
So for me, it's like, at what point do we draw the line on that? And how can we as a community in general, just every sort of marginalized group or anyone that's trying to promote social justice, change, how can we make that conversation continue past those weeks? And I think that's a big challenge for a lot of charities and people that are in different communities that have those days do find, because getting buy-in from especially big business and stuff, as we touched on throughout the year, is hard because they're trying to hit sales figures, and yeah, how much of it's virtue signaling. But yeah, as a whole, I think it's good to be able to shine the spotlight on these things. It's when you get into the background of it. I mean, how do you feel with any sort of disability charities or days that exist? Is it a similar thing for you, or do you?
Yeah, I think. I mean, I kind of take the view that they're not meant for me, and Neurodivergent Week, and maybe I'm putting words in your mouth here, are meant for you. Neurodivergent Week is meant for me, and sort of a disability week is meant for you. It's always meant, I think, for the people who don't have that condition, to learn more about them. I mean, I was listening, I had radio on during the week, and a lot of the shows I was listening to, had segments on Neurodiversity Week, and they would be speaking to people who had, the issues. So I learned stuff from listening to them about, what the issues they had in their life or the struggles they had, and how they adapted to it. So I learned some stuff over it. So yeah, I'm kind of quite sort of blasé myself when it comes to Disability Week or whatever, because it's like, well, I'm living with, I know you don't need to tell me, about these things. So I always look at it that it's meant for the people without that condition, to raise awareness and get them talking and get it more open, that it's okay to sort of to talk about these things, and that we should talk about these things. So yeah, I'm on the whole, I'm like you. I think they're needed. I mean, it's almost a shame that they're needed, but at the same time, you can have it's good to focus on things every now and again, and just bring people's thought process back into a more centralized position. So yeah, it's nice to have them, but yeah, it's definitely meant for people who don't have the conditions. I
suppose a bit of both of what we said is key there. Like, as I said, it's great for the spotlight to be on certain topics at certain times, and then that develops into your point of that sparks, and it's what we're trying to do. If that sparks a conversation with people that aren't involved in that charity or didn't know they had a friend that was going through that, and they have one, I suppose it's done its job. It's more for me, like, and I guess I've got a negative association with certain days because, like, there's certain companies that will celebrate Neurodivergent Week, but also sell T-shirts that trivialize OCD and call it like obsessive Christmas disorder, when it's actually something that's quite a horrible disorder to go through. So on one hand, these companies will be like, no, it's fine to be like that, and we understand, and it's a safe space for this week. But then if they see a cute cat, they'll call themselves like, oh, I've got obsessive cat disorder. And it's that I guess has rubbed me up the wrong way in the past. But yeah, as a whole, I think the conversation for just day-to-day life and people in society is, it's a good thing.
It's good. It's good to have, isn't it? It's that old BT phrase when people had actual phones. It's good to talk, and it is. It's good to talk. It's good to raise the awareness, but you just have to, I think, be a bit wary sometimes.
That's the second retro throwback you've had today. You said phones, but earlier in the thing, I think you had what I do remember, but I've not seen in a while, which was a dentist. It's good to know that they still exist.
Oh yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. This isn't an NHS dentist. I am paying a fortune for the privilege, but it must be said, if they caught cancer early for me, might on the balance of probabilities be worth that money.
My dentist left 2.5 years ago for my practice, and they are yet to replace him. So Excellent. I don't know if I'll ever see a dentist again.
Fair enough. Right. So on that happy note, that brings to an end sort of our general chat that we planned for this podcast. So I thought we'd just, before we end, just give a quick overview of us going forward, really. Yeah, we want you guys to know that hopefully we're not just going to be a little flash in a pan and sort of die out after a couple of episodes. What was that great stat that you had, Danny? You told me.
I can't remember the full quote, but I know that an old friend of mine from school said that it was great that we were doing what we were doing, and to do with podcasts, 90% don't make it past episode 3, so we're on our way there. But I think it was only 1% of podcasts make it past episode 20. So by making a 21st episode, you're in the top 1% of podcasts in the world. So yeah, we're trying to go down that route, and fingers crossed with people's support and continuation of this conversation, we'll get there.
Great. So it'll probably all go to hell, but if we can make it to 21, we're quids in. So going forward, we're going to do some couple of deep dive episodes, about me, about Danny, getting a bit more into our conditions, talking about it. We've got some episodes coming up about holidays or about stress in our lives, about relationships, sort of all general sort of day-to-day things. But as we mentioned earlier in this episode, coming at them from a different side, how we've approached all these things, and then ultimately, a bit further down the line, we'd very much like to have some guests on, people who might work in mental health charities or communities, or physically disabled charities, or people that are suffering from other conditions, or we're very, very open to anything like that. Obviously, our worldview on these is quite limited to our own conditions. We're certainly not speaking for everyone with a mental health condition or a physical disability. We're very much aware there's a lot of variation and a lot of things out there. So, going forward, we'd really like to get some people to come on and talk about their life. And
I think ultimately we're a health and wellbeing podcast, and we are, as you say, we're limited. Like the question that was just posed to me, our answers were opinion based on our lived experiences and how we feel about it. It's not to say that it's right or wrong, or that different opinions wouldn't be welcomed. I think that's what we want to do with it. I would just say it's a conversation. We've got a few people that we know just work across like sports injuries or mental health already, that we can bring on and get their view. But yeah, I think, as you say, it's everything that we say, regardless of the question or the discussion, is our lived experiences and how it impacts us. Hopefully it'll open conversation for other people, but it's not to say that they need to do exactly what we did or get to it in exactly the same way that we have. So yeah, I think it'll be good to get some people on and to keep answering people's questions.
Definitely. Yeah, that's what we want. After all, we just want to have conversations with people, just like you would if you sat in a coffee shop or something with someone, and just having a chat and seeing what happens. And I will say it again, it is good to talk. So that's it. That you've reached the end of episode 2. Well done. We hope that you found it interesting. Thank you. We will have episode 3 hopefully at some point in the next week or so. So please look out for us there. Look after each other. and just be nice and make the world a better place. That's all we can ask. So thank you again for listening.
Keep talking.